Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. So apparently he appeared before Annas and then before Caiaphas, and now he's going to Pilate. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, the Jews didn't. By the way, he had to appear before Caiaphas to have some kind of a semblance of official proceedings to this trial. Annas was not officially the high priest. So for this to even be somewhat resembling an official trial, can't. What? That way, please go that way. This is just what I have to deal with all the time. The unit being next to me is being refurbished, and they've been at it for quite a while now, and they're really going at it. I don't know if any of the sounds have come across in this microphone, and of course those sounds bother the cats, so they're all kind of hyper right now. Anyway, so he appeared before Annas, before Caiaphas, and he was before Pilate. Then the Jews led Jesus from Caiaphas to the palace of the Roman governor. By now it was early morning, and to avoid ceremonial uncleanness, the Jews did not enter the palace. They wanted to be able to eat the Passover. If they entered a Gentile dwelling, they'd become ceremonially unclean and would not be able to eat the Passover later that evening. Now, Jesus and his apostles had eaten their Passover meal the night before. The priests were not going to eat their Passover meal until this evening, Friday evening. So Pilate came out to them and asked. So he's willing to. I mean, he is in their city. He's in their capital city for his. So he went out to them and asked, "What charges are you bringing against this man?" "If he were not a criminal," they replied, "we would not have handed him over to you." Well, that's some circular reasoning right there. He's a criminal because we say he's a criminal. Agree with us. Pilate said, "Then take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." "But we have no right to execute anyone," the Jews objected. This happened so that the words Jesus had spoken, indicating the kind of death he was going to die, would be fulfilled. Now, if the Jews had executed him according to their methods, they would have stoned him. That goes all the way back to the law, Leviticus. That goes all the way back to the days of Moses. Their official method of executing those who were condemned to death was stoning. The Roman method was crucifixion. Jesus is not going to die by being stoned, by being buried under a pile of stones. He is going to die up on the cross. So he has to die the Roman way. So he cannot be put to death according to the Jewish way. So they're going to need to have the Romans do this. Pilate then went back inside the palace, summoned Jesus, and asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Is that your own idea?" Jesus asked. "Or did others talk to you about me?" "Am I a Jew?" Pilate replied. "It was your people and your chief priests who handed you over to me. What is it you have done?" So Pilate must have been briefed in the situation somewhat, at least. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jews. But now my kingdom is from another place." "So you are a king then?" asked Pilate. But the only thing that Pilate cares about, in terms of capital punishment at least, is whether or not this guy is an insurrectionist. Is he going to start a rebellion and try to overthrow Roman control? He doesn't care if this guy claims to be the son of the Jewish God, or anything like that. That doesn't bother him in the slightest. He would care if this guy were seen to be a political revolutionary who wants to stage an uprising. That he would care about. "So you are a king then," said Pilate. Jesus answered, "You are right in saying I am a king. In fact, for this reason I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone on the side of truth listens to me." "What is truth?" Pilate asked. With this he went out again to the Jews and said, "I find no basis for a charge against him, but it is your custom for me to release to you one prisoner at the time of the Passover. Do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" They shouted back, "No, not him. Give us Barabbas." Now Barabbas had taken part in the rebellion. John gives us more details of the exchange between Pilate and Luke here, and makes it easier to understand then why Pilate did not consider Jesus a political threat. This helps kind of clarify something confusing in Luke. Luke has the same incident, but he said, Pilate asked Jesus, this is Luke 23, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus replies, "Yes, it is as you say." And then Pilate says, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." Which we'd think would be, yeah, this is a basis for a charge. If he's the king of the Jews, he's going to want to overthrow Rome. Why did Pilate let this go? Well, John explains it. I don't know if John did that on purpose per se, but it does help fill in the gap there about why Pilate did not consider Jesus to be a political threat to Rome and therefore didn't care about executing him, because he was talking about all this weird spiritual truth stuff and was clearly not someone who was going to take up arms and fight the emperor. This is a cat right here. Yeah. Say hi to the camera, cat. That's the cat's way of saying hi. Yeah. What? According to Luke, also Pilate sent Jesus to Herod at this point, and then he came back. Luke is the only one who records that. Luke, remember, is writing to a Roman official and is trying to portray the Romans as positively as possible, including Pilate, as positively as possible. So he does everything he can to absolve Pilate of blame. The other gospel writers don't have that particular concern. Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers John up to this point hasn't really reported any violence against Jesus except one guy slapping him. Now we do know from the other Gospels that he had already been beaten up by this point, but now he's getting the flogging. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And they struck him in the face while he was wearing the crown of thorns. Ouch. And they didn't use their hands to do that. They used that. The other Gospels will say they put a staff in his hands, and that's what they actually used to strike him in the face with. That's quite a beating. Once more Pilate came out and said to the Jews, "Look, I am bringing him out to you to let you know that I find no basis for a charge against him." When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to them, "Here is the man. Here he is. Here is the king, wearing a crown of thorns, streams of blood going down his face, and a purple robe." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify! Crucify!" They are mad with hate. They have to kill this man. They are possessed with the desire to end this man's earthly life. They hate him. They hate him beyond all reason. But Pilate answered, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for a charge against him." The Jews insisted, "We have a law, and according to that law he must die because he claimed to be the Son of God." You didn't tell me that. When Pilate heard this, he was even more afraid. And he went back inside the palace. He didn't hear that part before. He didn't know this guy was God, or the Son of God. They were withholding vital information from him. "Where do you come from?" he asked Jesus, but Jesus gave him no answer. "Do you refuse to speak to me?" Pilate said. "Don't you realize I have power either to free you or to crucify you?" Jesus answered, "You would have no power over me if it were not given to you from above. Therefore, the one who handed you over to me is guilty of a greater sin." From then on, and I don't know how, an hour, it couldn't have been that long, Pilate tried to set Jesus free, but the Jews kept shouting, "If you let this man go, you are no friend of Caesar. Anyone who claims to be a king opposes Caesar." Now that's going to cause trouble. That's exactly what Pilate doesn't want. Remember, Pilate did not have a good relationship with the Jews. Pilate and the Jews were not friends. I don't know if any of these governors of Judea ever were. Anyone who got sentenced to this, or signed to this post of being governor of Judea, was in for a rough time, and nobody really wanted it. We'll read about governors later on who have strained relationship with the Jews. Pilate didn't like them, and they didn't like him. And they will, and he knows they dislike him enough that they will follow through on their veiled threat here to send to Caesar saying this man is an enemy of Caesar. He doesn't want them to do that. That's the last thing he wants. When Pilate heard this, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judge's seat at a place known as the stone pavement, which in Aramaic is Gabbatha. It was the day of preparation of Passover week, about the 6th hour. "Here is your king," Pilate said to the Jews. But they shouted, "Take him away! Take him away! Crucify him!" "Shall I crucify your king?" Pilate asked. "We have no king but Caesar," the chief priests answered. Finally, Pilate handed him over to them to be crucified. We have no king but Caesar. This is a flat denial of God as their king. That goes all the way back to when they wanted a king to rule over them 1,000 years earlier, and God gave them Saul. In the latter days of Samuel, people knew that Samuel, the last judge, his sons were corrupt. They didn't want his sons to be in charge of them, so they wanted him to appoint a king. And God said to Samuel, "They haven't rejected you, they've rejected me as their king." 1,000 years later, here they're saying, "We don't have a king, but Caesar is our king." You can't get any more of a flat-out rejection of God than that. Pilate wanted to satisfy the Jews because, like I said, he didn't like them and they didn't like him. So this is an instance where he let them have what they wanted so as to not increase tensions between him and them even further. He probably thought by having Jesus beaten up so badly and bringing him in front of them, bloodied and bound and tortured as he was, they would feel sorry for him and let him go. That's probably what he was thinking. That obviously did not happen.